Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on victims' perspectives on the Biden-Harris border crisis. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please rise.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair will now recognize himself for an opening statement. On day one, the Biden-Harris administration made 3 changes that led to the unprecedented situation we've seen in our country. Day one, they decided no more building the wall, no more remain in Mexico while we evaluate your asylum claim, and once you get here, you will not be detained, you will be released into the country. And as a result of that, 10 million migrants have come into the country, 99 on the terrorist watch list. We've lost track, they've lost track of hundreds of thousands of young people who came into the country. Because of all those decisions made, again, deliberately, intentionally, in a premeditated way on day one of this administration, all kinds of terrible things have happened. All kinds of terrible things. Jocelyn Nungaray, Noah Rodriguez, Kayla Hamilton, Weston Funder, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, Maria Gonzalez, Sam Fagan, Gabriel Fagan. Each one of these individuals were someone's child. Each one had a promising life ahead of them. Each one had people in their lives who loved and cared for them. Each one is a victim of the Biden-Harris open border policies. Jocelyn and Maria, not yet even teenagers, were brutally assaulted and murdered by illegal aliens who were released into the country by this administration. Kayla and Laken, young women pursuing their dreams, were brutally assaulted and murdered by illegal aliens who this administration released into this country. Rachel Morin, a mom of 5 young children, was brutally assaulted and murdered by an illegal alien welcomed into this country by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Noah Rodriguez, Sam Fagan, Gabriel Fagan, Weston Funder, teenagers and young men with bright futures were poisoned by fentanyl that this administration refused to stop from flowing across our southern border. You may have heard these names and stories and those of countless other victims of criminal illegal aliens, but not from Kamala Harris. Last week, a teenager in Manassas, Virginia, was allegedly kidnapped by an illegal alien, purportedly released into the country again by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's administration. In January, 2 New York City police officers were assaulted by a group of illegal aliens who entered the country thanks to this administration's open border policy. In May of 2023, a teenage girl in Alabama was viciously assaulted in a restaurant bathroom by an illegal alien with a violent arrest record in his home country, who was able to enter the country as a, quote, got away because of this administration's policies that ensure Border Patrol agents are too busy processing illegal aliens to actually patrol the border and do their job. Last February, a Nassau County, New York man was the victim of a brutal anti-Semitic attack at the hands of an illegal alien who this administration released into the country. I could keep listing these stories. This is what happens when you have an administration that doesn't care about border security, that prioritizes aliens over Americans and legal immigrants, and that refuses to enforce immigration laws in the interior of the country. I'm sure that we'll hear a lot of excuses from my Democrat colleagues today. We will hear how the illegal border crossings have decreased. Of course, we all know that the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are flying illegal aliens right now into the U.S. interior. We will hear that tired and flawed argument that natives commit more crimes than immigrants. Even if that was true, would it matter to Rachel's family, or Kayla's mom, or Jocelyn's mom, or Weston's family? The truth is that in every crime I've discussed, every one committed by an illegal alien was preventable. If only we had an administration that did their job. But unfortunately, we don't. We have a Democrat presidential candidate who for years advocated for open borders. She was appointed the border czar, yet presided over the largest mass illegal immigration in U.S. history. She has called for ICE to be abolished. She has laughed off questions about border security. She has promoted amnesty. She has said that, quote, undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. Thanks to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, we're on track to get to 12 million illegal aliens in the United States in this 4-year administration. 12 million. I always tell folks, 12 million, that's the equivalent of the entire population of our state of Ohio, 7th largest state in the union. And that's not even counting the 1.9 million known gotaways who've evaded Border Patrol or the unknown number of gotaways who've not even been detected. American communities are left to suffer the consequences. We're going to hear from people who've suffered it in a direct way today. And with that, I would yield to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before I start, I'd like to take a moment and express my sincerest condolences to all of our witnesses who have lost loved ones and to all of their families. I cannot imagine how difficult this loss has been for you, and I appreciate you being here to share their stories. May their memories be a blessing. Unfortunately, instead of working in a bipartisan fashion to find meaningful solutions to our broken immigration system, we are sitting in yet one more partisan hearing designed to divide us and to score political points before an election. In fact, one of our Republican colleagues said the quiet part out loud last week when he said in this season, quote, "These are messaging hearings that we've been doing," close quote. With only 8 weeks until Election Day, our Republican colleagues are trying to do everything they can to blame Vice President Harris for what they now call the Biden-Harris border crisis. They label her the border czar and the leader of the administration's border policy, even though they know that that is not and never was the case. Let's be clear. Vice President Harris was never in charge of immigration policy for the Biden administration and was certainly not the border czar. That position does not exist, so of course she could not have been appointed to it. My Republican colleagues know this, of course, but have never let the facts get in the way of their messaging. The truth is that President Biden directed Vice President Harris to address the root causes of migration from Mexico and the Northern Triangle. In that role, she generated over $5 billion in public and private investments aimed at creating economic opportunities in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. That investment has paid major dividends. Between fiscal years 2021 and 2023, Border Patrol apprehensions of migrants from those countries dropped by nearly 50%. That's because immigration is impacted by factors beyond one country's policies. People do not leave their lives and homes behind on a whim. The people crossing our border immigrate because life has become unsustainable in their home countries, because of factors like persecution or economic, food, or political insecurity. By investing in other countries, we help ensure that people can build a better life for themselves without having to seek security elsewhere. These investments have contributed to the lowest levels of unauthorized crossings in 4 years. But you would not know any of that from seeing my colleagues do their press hits on Newsmax or from what we have heard today. During today's hearings, we are going to hear from family members who have lost a loved one from fentanyl poisoning or as a result of a crime committed by someone who entered the country over the last 4 years. There is a verse in the Torah that hangs in my office, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice, justice shalt thou pursue. The families here today want justice for their loved ones. They want to ensure that no other family has to suffer the pain of what they have gone through. These are noble goals. The heinous crimes these families have suffered should be universally condemned. The perpetrators should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of our laws, and then they should be removed from the country. But this is not a story that began 4 years ago. Tragically, the same story could be told of any president. Former President Trump's administration released undocumented immigrants who went on to commit crimes. Now, do I blame President Trump for those crimes? Of course not. He has his own crimes to worry about. And as I have said all Congress, no president has ever had the resources to detain every individual who crosses the border without authorization. Our immigration system is broken, and it will take a substantial bipartisan effort to fix it. We need more judges and asylum officers so migrants can have their asylum cases heard in a matter of weeks, not years, so we can stop so-called catch and release. We need to expand lawful pathways for migration, as the Biden-Harris administration has been trying to do, so people can come to the United States after they are vetted in an orderly and safe manner. And we need to look at immigration in a holistic manner to see the benefits that immigrants bring to this country and not focus only on the negatives. Immigrants' contributions have helped ensure that we came out of the pandemic stronger than any other advanced economy. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office found that recent immigrants will cut the deficit by $900 billion and add revenues of $1.2 trillion over the next decade. Immigrants make essential contributions to our society, our economy, and our character as a country. And they do so despite an immigration system that has been profoundly broken for decades. But all Congress, my Republican colleagues, have shown they do not have an interest in fixing the system so that we may take advantage of the remarkable contributions that immigrants make to our country while keeping out those who would do us harm. Instead, they would rather blame Democrats and push unworkable solutions. Republicans spent a year saying that their dream bill, H.R. 2, is the only way to secure the border, even though they know that it cannot become law, having failed twice to pass the Senate, receiving just 32 votes earlier this Congress. In the Senate, I would note, with 49 Republicans. Then they insisted that the price of helping protect Ukraine against Russian aggression was enacting harsh border enforcement legislation. Senate Republicans even managed to find bipartisan support for a border bill in the Senate, a bill that Minority Leader McConnell called the toughest border bill in 30 years. But Republicans could not take yes for an answer. Donald Trump said that he did not want to do anything that might help at the border in an election year because he wants immigration as a campaign issue. Other Republicans said it out loud too, saying they don't want to, quote, do too damn much to help a Democrat, close quote. Republicans showed clearly what Democrats have been saying over and over again, that they don't want to do anything that would help address our immigration system. They clearly have given up. They just want to demagogue. I wish that was not the case. Vice President Harris has made it clear we need a reformed immigration system with robust lawful pathways to citizenship, strong security and controls at our border, and a modern approach to a global issue that has been neglected for far too long. Democrats stand ready to work on real solutions to these problems. I only wish we had a willing partner. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back without objection. All of the opening statements will be included in the record. Today's witnesses, we start with the Honorable Mike Boudreaux. Sounds like you got roots in Louisiana with that last name. Sheriff Boudreaux is a lifelong resident of Tulare County, California, a place I've been. His 38-year career in the Sheriff's Department began as a sheriff deputy when he was 19 years old. He has served as sheriff since 2013. Sheriff Boudreaux holds a certificate in criminology, administration of justice, associate of science degree in administration of justice, a bachelor of science degree in criminology and management, and a master's degree with course study in the administration of justice and organizational development. Sheriff, we welcome you today. Ms. April Aguirre began her crime victim advocacy in Houston, Texas, after her 9-year-old niece was shot and killed while riding in a car with her parents. She's a veteran of the United States Air Force, where she trained as a nurse. She has an associate's degree in criminal justice from Houston Community College and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Houston. We appreciate you being with us today. Ms. Tammy Nobles is a realtor from Norfolk, Virginia. She volunteers part-time as president of the Down Syndrome Association of Hampton Roads and is a mother of Kayla Hamilton, a victim of a criminal illegal alien, and we appreciate you and sympathizing with your loss. Ms. Patricia Morin, a mother of 6, including Rachel, who was the victim of a criminal illegal alien, stay-at-home mom for 25 years, homeschooled her children. She returned to the workforce after her oldest child graduated from high school and worked in the mortgage banking industry and retail management until she retired. She currently works part-time as an office administrator for a church and resides in Maryland, and we appreciate you being with us as well. Ms. Ann Funder is a wife and mother of 4, whose 15-year-old son, Weston, was poisoned by fentanyl. Since then, she has spoken publicly about her son's death to promote change and educate American families about the consequences of the fentanyl crisis. We appreciate you being with us as well. And Ms. Alex Nungaray is a resident of Houston, Texas, and is the mother of Jocelyn, a victim of criminal illegal aliens. Dr. Cecilia Farfán-Méndez is a researcher with the Institute of Global Conflict and Cooperation at UC San Diego and the Center for Studies on Security, Intelligence, and Governance at the Institute Technology de Mexico. Her research and work focuses on organized crime, female participation in criminal groups, and U.S.-Mexico security cooperation. And finally, Ms. Melissa Lopez. We will now yield to the gentlelady from Texas to introduce a witness from her district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to introduce a fellow El Pasoan to the committee this morning, Melissa Lopez, who is doing vital work as the executive director of the Estrella del Paso organization. Estrella del Paso is the largest legal services provider in our region. They assist asylum seekers, victims of trafficking, and migrants who have faced a host of dangerous and life-threatening situations. Over a career spanning 17 years providing legal services for immigrants, Melissa has met countless immigrants and experienced firsthand just how many people come to the United States in order to pursue a better life for themselves and their families. Ms. Lopez, thank you for all of your work and welcome.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields back. We will welcome our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you all please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true, correct, and to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show that each of the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You can be, thank you, you can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. We're gonna run right down the line, we will have to break in about 35 minutes. There's an important ceremony taking place over in the Capitol for the families of folks who were killed in Afghanistan 3 years ago. And members want to be that, but we'll take a break and we'll have some food for you. But we're gonna start with the sheriff and then move right down the line. So Sheriff Boudreaux, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jordan and Ranking Member Nadler and distinguished members of the committee, my name is Mike Boudreaux. I am the sheriff of Tulare County in California. Tulare County sits in the heart of California, right in the center. We're a very large agricultural community. I have spent 38 years in law enforcement working in the sheriff's office and working with victims throughout my career. I am also an FBI National Academy graduate in Class 251, where I have law enforcement leaders from all over the country and as well all over the world who I have connections with. When it comes to the dangerous and sometimes deadly impacts of what I feel is a failed Biden-Harris administration on open border policies, the impacts of illegal immigration in California, I must say that I have a front row seat. I also served as the California State Sheriff's Association president, where I meet regularly with all other 57 sheriffs, there's 58, me being number 58, in the state of California hearing their stories. There's a few examples that I would like to be able to provide today. We have a long issue of illegal immigration in California. However, over the last 3 years of the Biden-Harris administration, we have a deadly impact of violent criminals coming into our communities. We have migrant communities of farm workers who are now infiltrated and terrorized by those that they had fled other countries from, who are now in our communities terrorizing them, threatening their children to be involved in drug trafficking, gun running, drug dealing, as well as gangs and sexual activity of children. I'm very involved with these migrant communities as the sheriff, and I can tell you the personal stories and impacts are heart-wrenching. Many of these communities have to do what's called paying rent. You must give money to the drug lord or the gang member or the violent criminal of those that you fled if you want to live peacefully within that migrant community. I'm very familiar with Kamala Harris as the Senator and Attorney General in California, and I can tell you that the words that she has often spoken when it comes to defunding the police and ICE kin to the KKK is demoralizing to law enforcement and those trying to protect our country and protect victims here in California and the United States. I have, as the president, walked the border, and over the course of the 38 years as sheriff, I have visited the border many times, and I have many friends in the Border Patrol as well as Homeland Security, and I can tell you that they are frustrated. Thousands of people coming through a day where I visited and I saw people from Yemen, China coming through. In our town, we had a friend of mine, Jody Jones. His brother was shot and killed at an AM/PM mini-mart, where an illegal immigrant who had been deported 3 times over found his way back into the United States, attempted a robbery, and shot and killed a man. My deputies got into a pursuit and got into a violent shootout with this man. We have a case where that's called the reign of terror. I can tell you, as the Attorney General, Kamala Harris, often lessened the impact of law enforcement with her quotes of defunding the police. I have story after story, but most recently what we're starting to see is an influx of Mandarin, or those from China. We're unraveling a human trafficking case of over 40 women who are involved in sexual prostitution up and down the state of California, who have found their way across the border and are here illegally, and that case is ongoing. We have financial crimes from Mandarin, thieves from China, who are stealing millions of dollars online from our elderly in the Central Valley and up and down the state of California. We had an illegal immigrant, El Mano Negro. He was a hired hand by the cartel, where we arrested, and finally he admitted to killing and assassinating over 25 people in our county at the hands of the cartel. We just unraveled a cartel in our county, dismantling that cartel. The people in that cartel that we arrested openly admitted that within the last 3 years, it's easier now to move human beings, drugs, guns, fentanyl most specifically, across the border, and that it's easier now than in the history of their cartel. I can tell you, because of the Biden and Harris administration, law enforcement resources are quickly depleted. We have victim after victim that we see, as you'll hear today, and that these stories are not unfamiliar to law enforcement up and down the state of California. And so with that, I'll conclude and turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sheriff. Ms. Nobles, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning to the members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak. On July 27th, 2022, I received the worst news that a parent can ever get, that my newly 20-year-old daughter, Kayla Hampson, was found deceased with injuries consistent with homicide. There are no words that describe the heart-wrenching, soul-crushing pain of losing your child so horrifically. Kayla was a happy and loving person. She loved life and God. She was extremely ambitious, and despite having autism, she was determined to make her way in this world. She loved animals, especially her cat Oreo, and cared about the homeless. At first, we knew very little details of the murder until an arrest. At the end of March of 2022, Walter Javier Martinez was apprehended by Border Patrol, crossing illegally into the U.S. Martinez stated that he was 16 years old and feared gang activity in his country in El Salvador. As an unoccupied alien child, Martinez was granted access into the United States with no background checks or vetting. Homeland Security did not verify the sponsor and allow Martinez to go live in Frederick, Maryland. There were behavioral issues with him living with the sponsor, and he ended up staying with his half-brother who lived in the same neighborhood, mobile park, as Kayla. There were behavioral issues with Walter, so the half-brother called the property manager, owners of the mobile home park, which I thought was a legit company. We learned that an illegal immigrant couple owned the mobile homes and took it upon themselves to allow this 16-year-old to rent a room in the same mobile home as Kayla. Martinez was living there less than 5 days before he violently and brutally murdered my daughter. Walter Javier Martinez broke into Kayla's room while she was sleeping that morning. Kayla left a voicemail on her boyfriend's phone. According to the voicemail, a struggle was going on, and Kayla can be heard crying, groaning, and struggling to breathe. Martinez can be heard on the voicemail hushing her, and near the end telling her, "I'm sorry," in Spanish, while strangling her with her phone charging cord. After she was deceased, Martinez tied her up and sexually assaulted her. This was confirmed by the annual swabs that matched Martinez's DNA. Kayla fought for her life that day. She had bruises up and down her arms, her fingers, the left side of her face, her back, and down her leg, and deep wounds to the neck from the charging cord. Local police knew right from the beginning he was the main suspect just by their initial investigation. It took the Aberdeen police to confirm that Martinez was a known gang member of MS-13 and that Martinez had a criminal record in El Salvador in 2020. If Homeland Security did a background check, then they would have known this, and Martinez wouldn't have been able to be on U.S. soil. With Martinez being 16 years old, Maryland Child Protective Services took custody of Martinez until the DNA results came back. The Aberdeen Police Department was very transparent to CPS. The Aberdeen Police Department demanded that Martinez be held in a secure location because he was a threat to society based on the murder and injuries of Kayla Hamilton. It was later learned that Child Protective Services placed Martinez in a group home with other children and then placed Martinez in a foster home, which allowed him to be enrolled in high school. This was also confirmed by an investigative reporter with Fox 45 Project Baltimore who got an actual confirmation from Edgewood High School. While in jail, a letter was intercepted that Martinez wrote, confessing to 4 murders and 2 rapes. Martinez ended up pleading guilty and taking the plea deal of 70 years. Since he was a juvenile at the time, even though he was tried as an adult, Martinez couldn't get life without the possibility of parole. This is not a political issue. This is a safety issue for everyone here living in the United States. Not only was Kayla's life put at risk and taken, so many other children and adults were at risk. The Biden-Harris administration is not putting the American citizens' safety first. The United States government must secure our border. We need to properly vet and background check all border crossers. This isn't about immigration. This is about protecting everyone here in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Knowles. Doctor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and members of the committee, thank you for conducting this hearing and the opportunity to explain why characterizing the U.S.-Mexico border as a region in crisis is an inadequate and unproductive way for addressing North America's cross-border challenges. I appreciate the invitation to participate. I am an expert on organized crime and U.S.-Mexico security cooperation. As a scholar of U.S.-Mexico relations, and as a proud resident of the border region, I am convinced that transnational problems require transnational solutions. To the families testifying today, I want to acknowledge your grief. There are no actions that can reverse the tragedies that you have experienced. My testimony today does not seek to invalidate yours. On the contrary, it is precisely because I have witnessed and collaborated with families on both sides of the border that have lost loved ones that I am here to offer what I believe is a more constructive and sustainable path forward.
I apologize. We got someone checking just to make sure that everything's fine, but
Thank you.
We'll
Shall
continue.
I?
Yeah, you can continue, Doctor.
Thank you. The human cost of our shared tragedies cannot be overstated. Today, Americans are more likely to die from an opioid overdose than a car crash. Equally important, homicide is the leading cause of death for men ages 15 to 44 and the second cause of death for women ages 15 to 24 in Mexico. Painfully, while families who have lost loved ones to overdoses or homicides may find some degree of solace in visiting their graves, this remains a dream for the thousands of family members who search for the more than 115,000 Mexicans who have disappeared. North America is facing simultaneous and connected health crises. Perhaps paradoxically, the silver lining is that there is no secret solution awaiting to be discovered. Actions available to Congress can contribute to stemming the devastating effects of these public health challenges and can be implemented through U.S.-Mexico cooperation. Even though the border is characterized in Washington, D.C. and Mexico City as a perpetual crisis, for those of us who live and work in the region, we know this is where the most creative and innovative developments in the bilateral relationship take place. This is not an overstatement. Consider, for instance, the health challenges the world faces with COVID-19. In a time of fear and uncertainty, where countries close borders, the governments of California and Baja California worked in partnership with public health experts, academia, and the private sector to engineer a cross-border vaccination program, a program, I might add, that actually benefited supply chains for the defense sector in the US as well. This type of proactive, collaborative ingenuity, rather than unilateral measures, is what is most urgently needed. Today, I present to you an evidence-based call to action from the border with 6 actions to start. First, support the Stop Arming Cartels Act. Simply stated, by failing to address firearms trafficking to Mexico, the U.S. is subsidizing the operating costs of criminal groups. It is as if cartels receive an annual aid package with state-of-the-art technology to carry out the crimes this Congress wants to stop. Develop mutually accepted vetting mechanisms for exchanging information. Best practices from other parts of the world show that weakening the activities of organized crime requires trusted partnerships across countries. As long as Mexico and the U.S. lack these mutually accepted vetting mechanisms, bilateral cooperation will be hindered. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act is an important step in addressing straw purchasing and trafficking. However, successful implementation requires resources for prosecutors and the ATF. The BSEA also provides an opportunity for seeking meaningful cooperation with Mexican counterparts. Provide funding and support research for improved metrics of border security. In 2024, it is unacceptable that the indicators of border security are detentions and seizures. Recording how many people were stopped or how many drugs were seized hardly builds a smart border. There is significant room for improvement. These metrics should be developed in partnership with civil society, the private sector, and academia. And finally, visit the border and its binational communities. The border is not only a legal definition or a boundary between 2 countries. Our shared problems and their solutions do not stop and start where the fence meets the ocean. There is no first substitute for first-hand experience. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ms. Lopez. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. I'm grateful for this opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Melissa Lopez, and I am the Executive Director of Estrella del Paso, formerly known as Diocesan Migrant and Refugee Services. I'm an attorney who has spent my 17-year career working with and representing immigrants in immigration matters. Estrella del Paso is the largest provider of free legal services in far west Texas and New Mexico, serving nearly 58,000 people in 2023. In my experience, immigrants come to the United States to contribute in positive ways. They make our communities more vibrant by sharing their culture, language, and traditions. I was born and raised in El Paso, the child of immigrants from Mexico. Though born in Mexico, my parents are now naturalized U.S. citizens and have spent more of their lives in the United States than in Mexico. I graduated from the University of Texas at El Paso in 2004, and then attended the University of Texas School of Law in Austin, graduating in 2007. As much as I loved living in Austin, I knew that I would be returning to El Paso after law school. I was blessed to be hired at Estrella del Paso, and the rest, as they say, is history. In my 17-year career, I have been blessed to work with thousands of immigrants from all over the world. My experience working with immigrants has taught me one special lesson. The only difference between me and my clients is where we were born. Had I been born just a few miles south of where I was, in the hospital in El Paso, I would be them. It has been my experience that the people I am blessed to serve are simply trying to provide for their families and ensure they are safe. My mom always says that a parent's goal is to create a life that allows their children to do better financially than their parents did. I find this to be particularly true in my clients. They walk well over 2,000 miles to ensure that their children are safe, can thrive, and live a peaceful life where they can achieve their dreams. In truth, I'm a prime example of what children of immigrants can do. I'm the first in my family to graduate college. I'm the first in my family to obtain a professional degree. And I'm the first in my family to become an attorney. I am who I am because I have seen my mom work hard and fight through adversity and have a grit that I wish I had just a little bit more of. I think one of the biggest blessings of my life is being born and raised in El Paso. El Paso is a binational, bicultural community in far west Texas that sits on the border between the United States and Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico. El Paso is a community rich in love and culture. El Paso is an immigrant community. So many people are born in El Paso but raised in Juarez, or vice versa, as was the case for my parents. El Paso is consistently ranked among the safest cities in the country, surpassed only by Honolulu, Hawaii, a few years here and there. El Paso is a safe city because we are an immigrant community. The worst crime committed against Hispanics in U.S. history was a mass shooting that occurred in El Paso on August 3rd, 2019. The perpetrator of that crime was a white supremacist born in Dallas, Texas, who drove over 600 miles to massacre 23 people and injure hundreds more at a Walmart in El Paso. He systematically sought out immigrants due to the dangerous rhetoric that all immigrants are bad. After the shooting that killed both United States citizens as well as immigrants from Mexico and Germany, El Pasoans wrapped our arms around the survivors because that is who we are. El Paso, very simply, is love. We recognize, appreciate, and respect the humanity in every single person. We treat people with the dignity they deserve because at the end of the day, we all are human beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Aguirre. Ms. Aguirre, just hit the mic there if you could. Thank you.
As a daughter of immigrant parents, I am ashamed of what the Biden and Harris administration has done to our country by opening our borders to all, including criminals, who are wolves in sheep's clothing. Doctor, I heard you mention that over 115,000 people are missing in Mexico. I know. One of those people is my cousin, and all of my family lives in Mexico. We have to comprehend that the majority of those are women, and there's a word that is used in Mexico, and it's called femicidio, and that's called femicide, the act of being murdered just because you are a woman. It is unimaginable for us to think that alongside those seeking refuge are not the same people that are there to victimize them, and alongside victimized citizens as well. I have personally worked 3 cases within the city of Houston where little girls were targeted simply because they were young, beautiful, and vulnerable, and of course, underage. Predators have an appetite for children. And in all these cases, there was an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old whose mom is here today, and a 16-year-old freshman in high school. I'm gonna be the voice today for Maria Gonzalez, who is also a migrant. She arrived here, and her father didn't own a vehicle. He walked to work. Her father is the essence of the type of immigrants we should want in this country. Law-abiding, hardworking man, working for $7 an hour, 14 hours a day. He left that weekend, and he told his daughter he was going to work. She had a cell phone. She was in the safety of her home. This migrant that came here as a child crossed the border, was given to a sponsor, and was only here 3 weeks before he decided to leave his sponsor's home, go to Pasadena, Texas from Louisiana, and he saw Maria. At one point or another, he decided that was gonna be his prey. He saw her father leave to work. He knew their schedule. He knocked on Maria's door. Maria, recognizing that it was a neighbor, told her father on WhatsApp on a voice message, "Hey, Dad, somebody's knocking on the door." And she said it in Spanish, "Papi, me estás tocando la puerta." Dad, is that you knocking on the door? Thinking her father had forgotten something. That was the last time he ever heard Maria's voice. When Maria went to the door, there's a little chain that we have in those apartments, right? When you open the door to try to keep us safe, that chain was not enough to keep this animal out of Maria's apartment. He pushed his way in, and Maria fought for her life. She was 11 years old. To all of you, 3 little girls passing away may not be many, but what if one of those little girls was your daughter, your granddaughter, or your niece? Can you imagine them trying to fight off a grown man off of them? The shock of being undressed, the pain of being beaten and smothered. Trying to fight for your life while a predator's one objective is to use them to satisfy their sick and demented appetites. Our girls deserve protection. Our girls deserve to live their life without fear. Our girls deserve to perish in a natural manner of old age. We live in a society where we have gained so much medical advancements that if you have cholesterol, diabetes, heart disease, they will take care of you. But we're losing healthy children. And this case to me resonates because she's also a migrant child. And this says to me we're letting everything through the border because we're not checking them. And you're victimizing citizens, you're victimizing immigrants alike. We're not against immigration, we're against unvetted immigration. And I want you to know, as a woman who has a majority of their family in Mexico that are not privileged enough to be in this country, there's no such thing as collecting DNA swabs. There's no such thing as embalming. There's no such thing as doing a real autopsy like we do here. Mexico and Central America is where predators thrive. You think they come here to this country and it's the first time they do this? No. This is just a place where we figure it out and we care about our daughters. And we're gonna find out. Finding a little girl in Mexico that has been sexually assaulted is just a normal Tuesday. It's nothing unusual. So I want you to know, immigration is good. I am the living proof of that. My parents don't even have a speeding ticket. That's the type of migrants we want. But bringing them to this country, it's further victimizing what these same immigrants got away from in their countries. We have to have some form of check and balances, a real system to identify these criminals that are hiding in they're wolves in sheep's clothing is what they are. So I ask you, I implore you, close your eyes. I know you have a little girl in your family. Imagine somebody undressing her. Imagine somebody fighting her. Imagine somebody strangling her. Maria was so covered in bruises, I had to go and shop for a funeral dress for her to cover the damage that man did to her. Maria lost fingernails in her fight, and she's a migrant child. Not everybody is the same, and we have to identify these monsters because, like my dad says, they're giving all of us good migrants such a bad name. We owe it to the migrants that are getting away from these communities, and we owe it to our citizens to offer them a safe society. People say, well, citizens kill too, but in these cases, all of these cases are migrants that cause this. And it's the failure of our policies by not checking them. Thank you.
Amen. Well said. Ms. Funder, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Dear members of the House Judiciary.
Ms. Funder, hit that microphone too. Hit that button right there, yeah.
Dear members of the House Judiciary Committee, my name is Ann Funder, and I'm a wife and a mother of 4 beautiful and amazing children. And I'm here to share the story about the devastating consequences, just want to put that up real quick, of the Biden-Harris administration's open borders. I hope that by sharing my pain, others may be spared the same heartache. I want to tell you about my firstborn son, Weston. He was an extraordinary child. He was the best big brother. He was a sweet and loving son and a great friend to so many and a joy to everyone who knew him. We attended church. He loved football, hockey, surfing, had so many friends. He had a great heart of gold and a compassion for others that I've never seen on another person. He was always standing up for other people. My husband and I were fully involved in our children's lives, and Weston, like so many teenagers, he wanted to fit in. And during his second semester of his freshman year in high school, at the early age of 15, he succumbed to a moment of peer pressure. He made one tragic mistake, and it took his life. And in February of 2022, our lives were shattered. Our firstborn son, my everything, he was gone. And his whole future and everything that we had prepared him for, all of our hopes and dreams, were stolen in that instant. And despite our best efforts, and our conversations about the dangers of drugs, and our constant support, and our love for him, and he knew he was so loved, fentanyl claimed our son. But our kids are supposed to learn from their mistakes. And 20 years ago, this would not have killed my son. But they're dying from them. Kids today can't make mistakes. Fentanyl changes everything. Illicit fentanyl came over the open borders illegally that killed my son. It didn't give him the chance to learn from his mistake, and I hold Joe Biden and Kamala Harris responsible for my son's death. Their open border policies have led to this devastating crisis. Our tragedy could have been prevented if they had taken decisive action to protect Americans from fentanyl flooding over the borders. Instead, they've exacerbated this issue with their open border policies, and Vice President Harris, appointed to manage the border situation, and I have her tweet from March of 2021 that specifically says that she has been appointed to the border. And every Democrat, I hold Vice President Harris appointed to manage a border situation, and she has failed to act. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and every Democrat who supports these open border policies are complicit in the deaths of 300,000 innocent Americans, including my son, Weston. Say his name. Look at his picture. Since this administration took office, 300,000 sets of parents have had to bury their children. In 2021, till now, 300,000, and that doesn't include 2024. It's now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45, and it's rapidly becoming the #1 killer of teens, with 14 and under being the fastest growing demographic, and I can show you every day, babies are dying from this. Toddlers, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, your children, your grandchildren, and it can happen to anybody's children. President Biden, who knows the pain of loss and losing a child and has another child who has battled addiction, you would think that he would prioritize this issue, yet he remains absent. And Vice President Harris's March 23rd of 2021, her tweet claimed that she was appointed to address the border crisis. She acknowledged the difficulty of the task, but that it was a necessary one. However, for over 3 years, she has done zero to address this problem. The open borders are a matter of national security, and when this administration opened the borders, they gave operational control to the cartels who are operating a multi-billion-dollar business on American soil. I just want to say that, unregulated, tax-free. While not addressing the problem, it will continue to happen. I want to tell you how evil this drug is on our children. If your child tries fentanyl one time, it's not a matter of if they will die, it's a matter of when. The drug dealers are very well trained, and they're manipulative and predatory. They know it's 50 times more addictive than crack, and so if your child tries it once, they've got a customer. Withdrawal symptoms set in after one time of trying it. Within 2 to 3 hours, your child will be battling severe symptoms that we as adults could barely handle. And drug dealers, like groomers, convince your child that they can't tell their parents they've done something wrong. So they give them more. And now you have a child trying to deal with an addiction that they never wanted for the first time in their life. And for $7.50, you can deliver it to your front door, placed under a mat, where your child can deliver it to their front door on social media. Parents are finding their children dead in their beds, a place that should be their safe space of comfort, where they lay their heads at night. And in the morning, parents are waking up to this nightmare. And it's being supported by drug dealers, supported by the cartels, coming over our wide open borders.
This one?
Okay. I'm almost done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Few in this room can truly understand the depth of my pain, and unfortunately, too many families in America can. Weston is gone, and his death is a direct consequence of the decisions made by the Biden-Harris administration. The open borders have been allowed to persist and have led to tragedies like the one that I shared and shattered my family. I stand before you today to hold them and anyone who supports open borders accountable, and I implore you to take this to heart.
Thank you.
Let this be a catalyst for change, because the decisions that we make will prevent further tragedies and save lives. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the extra time.
You bet. Thank you. We're going to go, if we could go real quick, but then we have to take a recess. Ms. Morin, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I have before me a written statement, but it's hard for me to read off a piece of paper, so I'm just going to share from my heart.
Yeah.
My daughter, 37-year-old woman, she has 5 children. On August 5th, she went for a walk on a trail in a small town. We live in a small town in Maryland. We've walked this trail for over 25 years as a family, so it was very familiar, very safe. She went for her daily run. She didn't come home that night. The next day, they went out looking for her. They found her, and I'm going to tell you what the court records have said. They found her badly beaten. She was strangled. She was raped. The medical examiner said she had bruises that blanketed her body. She had 10 to 15 head wounds, and she was stuffed into a drain pipe. I went to the funeral home because I had to decide if we could do an open casket for her, for our grandchildren, for our family. And you could tell from looking at my daughter that they had filled in all the holes with wax. They tried to straighten her broken nose and tried to align her face back the way that to look normal. And she was covered with makeup so thick it didn't even look like it was a human being. And I wasn't allowed to see from the neck down the rest of her body. This person is, we found out after an investigation, we had DNA that came off my daughter, DNA from a crime that he had committed in Los Angeles where he attacked a 9-year-old girl and the little girl's mom. It turns out that this man was an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. Tammy Nobles and I live in the same town that Tammy Nobles' daughter lives in Maryland. My daughter lived 15 minutes south of this town. An illegal immigrant, he crossed the border 3 times, was sent back. The 4th time, he was a got-away. If they had at any time did the cheek swab for the DNA, they would have known that this person had an Interpol warrant for his arrest for murdering a woman in El Salvador, which is why he was fleeing to America. After he murdered my daughter, he stayed in the same town where he murdered her, continued to work in restaurants, and changed his appearance. And we did a nationwide search. We did flyers, we did commercials, we've done everything, interviews, everything we could to keep her story alive, to tell the horrible thing that happened to my daughter. I wish there was a way to show you pictures of her and what she looked like, what the crime scene looked like. It's the most brutal crime that has happened in Maryland that they can even remember. Her children are having a hard time. All of us as a family are having a hard time. We have nightmares. And I want to tell you another story. This story happened, I'll make it really short. In 1975, there was a 14-year-old girl who was abducted from her house by a criminally insane man. She was kidnapped. She walked 60 miles towards the Canadian border with this man. No food, no water, walked through the woods. At night, she was raped multiple times. The parents and the police did not expect to find this girl. And if they did, they did not expect to find her alive. I'm that teenager, and I can tell you that what I suffered as a teenager at the hand of a criminally insane man is nothing compared to the horrors that my daughter suffered. And it's because of these open borders. And I realize some of you are disinterested in this because you just think it's a partisan thing. But these are American people, these are American families, these are our children, and pretty soon they will be our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We need to close the borders. If I can survive a crime from an American citizen, these people that are coming over the border, if they're coming over illegally, it's because they have something to hide. Those that come here legally, they're doing the due process, which is necessary to protect them and to protect us. If they're coming over illegal, it's because they're hiding something. My grandparents were immigrants. They came into America at Ellis Island. They stayed at Ellis Island. They were vetted before they were allowed to come into the interior of the United States. I just left the southern border where I spoke to Border Patrol, and they showed me their gunshot wounds. They told me their stories about how they suffered broken necks, broken backs, fractured skulls. It's a war zone there, and we need to close it. We need to put those policies back into place that kept our citizens safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nungaray.
Good morning, members of the committee. I want to thank you all for having me here to share my daughter's story on how the current administration open border policies have affected us in Texas. I was 14 when I found out I was going to be a mom. I knew I was young and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I know I needed to do what was right, which was be the best mom I could be to my daughter. I fought for her. December 27th, 2011 was the day the rest of my life changed for the better. Jocelyn LaSalle Nungaray was born. She was the happiest, chunkiest little baby. She grew up to have this spunky, quirky, funny, beautiful little 12-year-old young lady. She had a personality like no other. She was so caring, loving, thoughtful, one of the greatest friends you could ask for. She was so talented. She had the biggest dreams to be an actress, and she swore that she was going to be famous one day. It has been 2 months and 25 days today since my daughter has passed away. On Monday, June 17th, 2024, my daughter Jocelyn was murdered and thrown in a bayou of water underneath a creek. On that Sunday night before I went to bed, told Jocelyn goodnight, and I loved her. She was there when I closed my eyes that night, and that Monday morning when I opened my eyes, she was gone. She was a preteen, out doing what teenagers do, going to the corner store to get a soda. She was preyed on by 2 illegal Venezuelan immigrants. They saw an innocent young girl and made her a target for their horrendous actions. That Monday morning, June 17th, was terrifying, waking up to know your child was missing and frantically searching the area where her phone was being pinged just 2 minutes away from our home. Driving up to that exact location to see crime scene tape and officers by a bridge, my heart sank. I ran out of the car to the officers. I explained I woke up to my daughter missing and I don't know where she is, but her phone was pinging right where we were. They said they hadn't seen anything and they would let me know. Within 45 minutes, I received a phone call from a sergeant asking me to come downtown to discuss her whereabouts. I'm still hanging on the hope that my 12-year-old daughter is still somewhere out there. They bring me to the floor labeled Homicide Division. I didn't know what to think. After being taken to a room, speaking for about every minute I remember leading up to my last moments with her was when they had finally told me that the body where my daughter's Jocelyn's phone was being pinged, followed by seeing the photo I showed them, confirmed their suspicions, and they did believe the Jane Doe body that was found matched the picture of my daughter, Jocelyn Nungaray. My heart shattered. I couldn't believe what was just told to me. A day after being told about my daughter, I was told they were going to need to release pictures of the illegal immigrants and my daughter from footage to the local news stations to help find who murdered my daughter, Jocelyn. They proceeded to tell me how my daughter was murdered. She was strangled to death. She had no clothing from the waist down. Her hands and her ankles were tied and thrown under the bridge of water like she was nothing but garbage. The community of Houston was the biggest support. Just 24 hours for them to be found, arrested, and charged with capital murder. Within those same hours, I received a phone call from the medical forensics confirming that the body was in fact my daughter, Jocelyn. The two illegal immigrants were Johan Jose Martinez Rangel, 22, and Franklin Pena Ramos, 26 years old. They're both Venezuelan natives. The Border Patrol apprehended Johan near El Paso on March 14th and was released that same day on an order of recognizance with a notice to appear. The Border Patrol also apprehended Franklin Pena on May 28th, also near El Paso. On that same day he was apprehended, a judge also ordered Franklin to appear in court at a later date. Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungaray's life. They saw a young girl, my daughter, Jocelyn, and placed a target on her without her even knowing. They were seen on video at 12:57 a.m. on June 17th, walking across the street down by the bayou under the bridge. At 3:04, only the two illegal immigrants emerged. They were down there for 2 whole hours. I can't even fathom what was going through Jocelyn's mind, the amount of fear she was feeling in the last moments of her life. Franklin Pena confessed that they had did something bad. The fact that they knew that their faces were exposed all over the news. They were trying to ask their boss for money so they could leave town. It was told, one of the illegal immigrants told the other one, after they were finished, to throw Jocelyn down in the bayou under the bridge to, quote unquote, get rid of any DNA. Individuals like that do not have a heart. They are nothing but monsters who are predators, and those are the kind of individuals that we so openly let in this country. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter. The program of the two illegal immigrants were enrolled to failed my daughter. I'm here to use my voice and raise awareness of how broken our country has become with these open border policies. My daughter should have been able to safely walk across to the store knowing that she was going to make it home. In regard to our open border failed policies, I have been working closely with Senator Ted Cruz to push the Justice for Jocelyn Act of 2024, which would require ICE to fill every single open detention center bed before releasing immigrants who entered the country illegally, and to have GPS monitoring tracking for certain immigrants with strict curfew hours, restricting them from being able to be out all hours of the night, and immediately be deported with who violates the terms of their release. My daughter, Jocelyn Nungaray, was 12 years old. She was an innocent kid doing kid things. She did not deserve to have her life ripped away from her and our family. She had her entire life ahead of her. Because of these open border policies, I'll never get to see her start high school, go off to prom, walk down the aisle, get married, or have her own kids, or ever reach her full dreams. All of it's gone. I now and forever will continuously be her voice, and I will not stop fighting for Jocelyn. I come to you all as a grieving mother to please help make this country make a change for the greater good. This country needs to make a change. We need to properly secure our borders. We need to be able to have that security knowing we are safe in our own country. And most importantly, we need to protect our children. They are supposed to be our future. Thank you so much for your time and for the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. We're going to take a recess. Back here, we'll have something to drink for you. Lunch will be coming at some point, and hopefully we'll be back and resume the committee as quickly as possible. Committee stands in recess.